So with that, I'm going to turn it, Jim, back to you.
Thanks, guys. A great summary of everything and bringing us up to date on CDMC. And I just want to talk very briefly about what the relationship is between CDMC and CDMC Plus. As we went over, CDMC is basically about, as Mike just finished up with, having a trust and confidence in putting your data in the cloud. That's been seen to be one of the most major hurdles for organizations migrating data into a cloud or multi-cloud environment. So the CDMC is really about accelerating that migration, establishing those controls that we just went over. It's really about the things that you must have if you're going to be meeting with best practice to have trusted data in the cloud. So it's not meant to be taken in parts or pieces. Obviously, as you harden your environment and strengthen your controls, you're gonna do that, over the course of time, one at a time, two at a time, whatever the case may be, in part. But at the end of the day, to be compliant with CDMC, it's meant to be taken as whole cloth, and that's where the certification comes in and certifying that you've actually achieved that. So CDMC Plus is different in that it's still a framework, but on CDMC Plus, what we're talking about now is all the great things that you want to be able to do, that you first had to get over the hurdle that CDMC is basically allowing you to get over in order to get the data in the cloud and use it for strategic business enablement. So as a result of that, the focus is more on, once you've got the data in the cloud, accelerating your ability to get value out of the data. Now, these capabilities we currently see as really optional. It's not necessarily something that you have to do, although your business model may necessitate that you may not see it as optional because of your line of business or how you see yourself as an organization. But for the most part, it's not meant to be taken as whole cloth. And we will be adding capabilities because there's a whole new world, so to speak, that we're opening up to once more and more data gets into the cloud, and what those capabilities will be for getting the best use out of them. And so as a consequence, we're going to keep these things as separate, but they are, I think it's becoming more and more obvious. That's our goal here, is to show that there is a very direct relationship between CDMC and CDMC Plus, and it's really CDMC is a foundation upon which you can do the other things that you aim to do in the cloud. Here is a summary of the scope of what we are currently working on with CDMC Plus. So as you'll see on the left, the foundations, we're not leaving CDMC in the dust. As we go through the different topics that I'm going to summarize here, we are remembering that we can't do any of these things without the capabilities that are in controls defined in CDMC. So we expect, as we go through this exercise of developing these capabilities, that there will be enhancements or updates that need to be made to CDMC. So that'll be a dot release, most likely. Since we've already vetted the CDMC, we don't anticipate there to be a huge update to it, but there will be updates nonetheless, including some kind of mapping between the two. With the actual working groups that we have in play, and we're covering analytics, data marketplace, data sharing, and data mastering. Federated data governance is about ready to get launched as well. And then we have data mesh in here. We don't know exactly what that's going to be or where it's going to go. We have some ideas, but we're also not rushing it, because that's going to come more at the end as kind of a reflection on all of these different capabilities and understanding what kind of fits within the mesh concept and what does not, as the case may be. Really, the focus is on best practices that people are actually doing, not a wish list. So there's plenty of places that you can go for wish list capabilities. This is tried and true, the things that we're documenting in this exercise. I'd like to turn it over first to you, Ali, just to kind of review, or I'm sorry, Jaber, just to go over the current status of a very quick status on what's going on in sharing a marketplace, and then I'll turn it over to Ali to do the same for analytics.
Hey, Jim, there was a question in the chat. I don't know if we want to address it now or not, but how CDMC and DCAM are working together. Do we?
Yes, I did see the question. I was just holding off because this is a recorded session that we're going to be sharing with everybody else, but it is a very relevant question. So we will be launching DCAM version 3 as a working group this year. And one of the things that we will be intending to do is take the lessons learned with the activity that we went through with CDMC, and then updating the DCAM with all of those relevant topics, because the DCAM is really the foundation for the CDMC. So in terms of talking about foundation, CDMC Plus rests on CDMC, but CDMC rests on just good data management capabilities, regardless of the technology stack that you're operating in. So
Yeah,
hopefully
Jim,
that answers
one
that
thing-
question. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to just say also there was the question said, are they complementary? And the answer is yes. We
Mhm.
intentionally let them be two frameworks that could be used independently. They don't have to be used together. And for instance, if it's a newer data program building from scratch, usually we would recommend go to DCAM because it covers your entire landscape. If you have a mature data program, you've implemented best practices, whether you've used DCAM or not, and you're really accelerating your cloud journey, then companies would start with CDMC first. So it really depends. We consciously made a decision not to hard couple the frameworks because they serve different business drivers.
Yes, until there's greater adoption and trust with data in the cloud, the CDMC will continue to be a very useful tool in getting over that hurdle. So we kind of drove a stake in the ground with the idea that there is a challenge for organizations to move their data into the cloud. There's a whole variety of reasons why that might be the case. The CDMC drives a stake in the ground saying that most of the organizations, the biggest hurdle for them is having confidence that once the data is in there, that it's safe. There are other considerations, skill sets, and just overall knowledge of what you can and cannot do. And the CDMC does speak to that, but it's really focused on that main hurdle. That's certainly been my experience as well. Yeah. Whereas the DCAM takes a much broader point of view about all the different things that an organization should be embarking on in order to have a soup to nuts data management program, regardless of the environment in which it's being done.
We should get Jubair to tell the team here a little bit about what's going on with data sharing and data marketplace. Jubair, over to you.
Yeah, thank you guys. So this is the general sort of subgroup structure that we use to break up the topics into more manageable sort of sub capabilities as we describe them. So in the data sharing and marketplace, we've really defined 3 sub capabilities to try and get organizations to a place where they're confident in what they're sharing, whether it's internal or external. There's good practice around what's being shared, how it's being shared, and how you enforce the rules that might breach or otherwise affect the data that's being shared in a negative way, right? So the first item we have is around managing and defining data products. So actually making data discoverable in a way that actually meets business use cases. So we've had a lot of very good discussion around how to define data products, what makes a data product, how to structure that in a data catalog in a way that makes it discoverable. Then we talk about how to apply terms of use to data products or data in the catalog. And if you're sharing externally, how do you then license around that? How do you set up things like digital rights management to ensure that you can enforce those terms of use? And then finally, we have designing effective data sharing mechanics, which will talk to the mechanical elements around sharing data. So how do you make a well-architected choice around the way in which you share data based on the type of data you're sharing, the use case, any other considerations that we have? And that's really the breakdown of our work. There's way more work with SMEs than we have listed here. Apologies to anyone that we've missed, but yeah, this is the current structure we have.
Yeah, this is a little dated, but as long as these sub capabilities are still what you're working on, and these days, times accurate, or have they changed at all? Because for anybody who wants to join, it'd be good for them to know when those meetings take place and who they should contact.
They're as accurate as they can be when you're trying to bring people from 20 different regions into the meeting on a weekly basis. So yeah, so they'll be accurate for the time being.
Yeah, got it. Thanks. And this is just an example of some of the work. This is not a complete, I just kind of stole, I just copied and pasted from one of the documents that's under development. As you can see, you know, it's following the structure that we talked about, the capability, sub-capability. Is there anything you want to say about this, Jubair? Can we turn over to Ali?
This is just a good structure that we generally use, right? What is the description of the capability? What do we want our reader to take away? And then what sort of objectives and characteristics should you be looking for?
Ali, analytics.
So let me give you a brief overview of what we're trying to achieve in analytics. There's two parts to the work here. One is to try and take the existing CDMC framework, which can control data assets, and see how much of it can be applied to analytical assets, things like models, visualizations, and other information delivery channels. And then we expect, once we've done that, which is relatively low-hanging fruit, that we might find other best practices in data management for analytics in a second phase. We are a working group that meets once a week outside of the Thursday working group, usually on a Wednesday. Sanjay Saxena and John Allen and myself are the leads for the working group, and we are very open to having more participants. The work that we'll go through shortly, actually, a brief overview is we've started with the definition of an analytical asset. We're about to apply that new very long list of potential analytical asset characteristics to the existing CDMC framework and work out where there's a neat fit versus where there needs to be a lot of offline work, and then there'll be further subgroups off the back of that. So the idea is that we'll be able to bring these analytical assets into the same data governance framework that we have in CDMC, and that you might see them in data marketplaces and be able to share those analytical assets, things like models, using the same data distribution capabilities that you have on the core data side. So that's the intention.
Thank you. I just wanted to cover really quickly how we're organizing our effort, what this overall structure is. So we have an executive advisory board. We have a meeting coming up on the 22nd of February. It's from 11 to 12 Eastern. It's been on a quarterly basis since we published the CDMC, but now that we have more activity going on with the CDMC Plus, we have more to talk about. So we're gonna shift that to a bi-monthly cadence. Again, that's the next meeting is on the 22nd of February. And the executive advisory board is really for the senior managers who have resources or a very strong interest in the outputs of what we're doing here with CDMC Plus. But they also carry the overall kind of interest and concern for nurturing and growing the adoption of CDMC as well. So it's covering more than just the CDMC Plus activities. Then we have a steering committee. The steering committee is comprised of the team leads. So any new team leads that are bubbling up through the activities in the working groups have an opportunity to participate in, and we would strongly encourage that they participate in the steering committee. That's a bi-weekly meeting on Tuesdays. And the goal there is to just to take a step back and review like the progress and anything that needs to be changed or new recruits that we want to bring in, the composition of the working group overall. And also the steering committee is meant to be a place where we can meet on a regular basis to talk about all things CDMC and make sure that we're addressing all of the practical considerations that are coming up as we're gaining more and more steam in both CDMC as well as the project. We also have a placeholder for, and it will be more than just a placeholder, I'm sure, coming soon, for the APAC region to participate in the steering of this activity as we get their working groups launched. And so the CDMC Plus working group, that is the project that we're really giving focus to here and why we're having this conversation. CDMC Plus working group is this meeting that we're in right now, Thursdays from 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern to noon. This happens every week, just so that people who are listening to the recording and are not in this meeting and they're new, or if you're new to this meeting and present, generally speaking, we carve up this meeting into two segments. The first hour is devoted to analytics typically, and then the second hour, well, not typically, we've been very kind of religiously conforming to this. We start with analytics, go for an hour, and then we do updates and some work during the second hour on data sharing and data marketplace. So as you can see below, these are all the smaller boxes. These are all the activities that are going on. You saw the dates and the times when they're meeting. We didn't have it in the presentation, but Ali, you mentioned that you guys meet on Tuesdays. Is that right? Or is it Wednesdays?
Wednesdays.
Wednesdays.
At the moment, although we can move it around depending on, we're about to ask for volunteers and we will make it work for you if you can only make a certain time.
Absolutely. So it is, for everybody who's new to this, you haven't really missed the boat. We're just really gaining traction. So don't hesitate if you think that you somehow missed out on the beginning. We're still kind of finding our cadence, our rhythm. And so don't hesitate to let us know if you want to get involved. And then some of the shaded areas are some of the upcoming topics that haven't even started yet: cloud data mastering, federated data governance. And then, as we talked about, there will be some activity around data mesh to be determined.